How did senior citizens and older neighborhoods benefit from your system?
It was very interesting. First of all, for example, where the light rail line is and where the future lines are even projected to go, the land values went up. Now, I need to warn you, though, you can have some, what the term is gentrification, where some very poor neighborhoods, all of a sudden, their values go up, and that has sometimes a negative impact. And there were some issues about gentrification, but then in talking to the people in those neighborhoods, they went, give me gentrification, because they wanted their land values to go up. In the long run, they knew that was beneficial, and also it became safer. And some neighborhoods really cleaned up. So you had some interesting dynamics in some very poor neighborhoods. All of a sudden, you had these yuppies come in and live right next door to a rundown house that had a value of maybe $35,000, and next door they built a $300,000 home, 2 blocks from the light rail line. And you're going, my gosh, this is unbelievable. But that's the gentrification issue that you're going to have to deal with. I brought that up to several other mayors, and they go, even the Detroit mayor at the time, and I said, he said, I'd rather have gentrification than the opposite. You know, there's a cause and effect in everything you do.
All right, one last question. If anybody has any cards, hold them up and we'll collect them. I'm going to reword this a little bit. How important is the interface between the transit system and plan and the regional land use code and comprehensive land use plan?
It's crucial, and don't start making too many compromises, but also make sure the codes and plans make sense, and it's just not some bureaucrat going, that's the plan, forget it. It's a circle too. You might have to make some adjustments fitting into economic reality. And I might also want to the business community, you got to bring in the neighborhood communities everywhere and communicate with them and be part of that communication. The business leaders, don't just ask them to come to your place. You need to go to the outlying neighborhoods, rich and poor and middle class, and talk to them and listen to each other. But show them a plan and then get feedback on the plan. And no one will be completely satisfied. But it's got to start somewhere. Sometimes, where we started the light rail line, people are going, what, there's no benefit for me, it's not coming to my area. You have to really sell them, this benefits the whole city. And it really benefited the whole bus system everywhere. Our bus service has been, I cannot stress to you how much difference that's made in getting people to and from work at important destinations. And now it's safe and clean. That was the major order I gave, being a public safety guy, is make sure our bus system and our trains are safe. And because if they get a bad rap about not being safe, people will desert them in a minute. Customers who are forced to take it.
One more question. How was your project funded? Did it involve a tax hike?
We had a referendum on a half-cent sales tax. And let me explain from my conservative perspective is, we were spending about $18 to $19 million a year out of property tax to sustain a dying system. So the deal I made was, if we have a regional sales tax, the city of Charlotte from now on will put $18 million from now on into the system, but never any more. So we transferred the burden of the entire transit system from the property tax to the sales tax, because it was going to bankrupt the city regarding the property tax. You know, everyone has different tax areas, but I just saw that we were going to have a Band-Aid to a bad bus system. It was unfair to the current people using the bus system. It was so embarrassing. It was really embarrassing. And now it's not. And we have express buses going out to the suburbs too. But if you go at 5 o'clock at rush hour when the banks are letting out the employees, there's a line getting onto the buses going out to the suburbs. And then we also have some neighborhood buses going through more of the inner city neighborhoods. The only other point I want to make that I've made to an audience last night is we try to take the politics out of bus routes. We have our transit commission makes policy on what the ridership needs to be. Where in the old days, the city councilman would go, well, you're not going to cut that bus, or, you know, I'm going to raise heck. Now, if it doesn't meet that criteria, it's cut immediately. with some, you know, some opportunities to succeed, but if over long term it continues to be too much of a drain beyond what our standards are, because we have certain fare box value and everything, we take the politics out of it and try to keep the politics out of it. One thing I've learned in politics is the more you politicize transportation, including roads, you end up putting them where they're not really needed. And that gets very, very expensive. And that's true in transit too. Don't put transit where it won't work.
All right, no more questions.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
That concludes our luncheon today. Thank you all for coming. We have sessions that are open to the public starting at 1:30, and there's schedules for those on the back, and I'll also put it up here on the slides. Before we go, I just want to say thank you again to the Chamber and to the Greater Tulsa Association of Realtors for sponsoring the lunch. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. So we'll break for 30 minutes, and we'll be back here starting again at 1:30 if you want to stay for that.